Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Board with Each Other, the board gaming podcast that reviews board games and looks at them through the lens of how well they play at two players. Whether that be with a good friend, your significant other, or with that Greek archaeologist that keeps digging up your backyard and you distract him to make him stop. My name's Al Simpson, and I'm joined as ever by my co-host, my wife, and my player too, Hannah Kelly.
You didn't say lovely wife. You normally say lovely wife.
My lovely wife.
Hi, guys.
Somebody sleeping on the sofa tonight. And today we are reviewing Akrotiri. Akrotiri is a two-player duel. And in Akrotiri, you take the role of a explorer archaeologist. I can't quite remember which. But you are basically traveling around the Greek archipelago trying to excavate lost temples. How this works is that each player controls a boat. So you use the boat to travel around the islands, and the game is played on a modular tile-laid board. So in essence, it is a tile-laying game, but there's a bit more to it than your classic sort of lay a tile, get points. As you start your turn, you draw a tile and you lay one down, and the tiles form a series of islands, but also a series of shipping lanes and docks through which your boats can travel. When you place a tile down, each tile has got a resource on it, which are essentially stone, water, wood, and volcanoes.
That's fire, yes.
Well, yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. But each tile has one of those resources on one of its islands. You place that resource from a marketplace board, and you place an extra wild resource of one of your choice on a different island on that tile. On your turn, you can take a number of actions. You start out being able to take 3 actions a turn, and they increase as the game goes along, and you excavate temples. You can move your boat. If it's empty, it can move quicker. You can travel over land from one dock to another, called
Portage.
portage or
Portage.
as I like to call it. You can load your boat with resources, for which you can hold 3, and it's quite handy to remember that because your boat physically holds 3 of the resource cubes. And you can buy map tiles. I'll get to those in a little bit from the main central island. Or you can consult the oracle, which basically means you get to flip cards from the tile deck until you get one with the resource that you would like. The main crux of the game is trying to locate and excavate temples. To do so, you have map cards, which are split into 3 difficulties: easy, medium, hard. And on those map cards, there will be a number of resources on the 4 compass points. When you lay your map card down on the orientation of which you are facing, you need to find an island on the board that meets the criteria of all those resources. So, for example, you'll need to find an island that has a red resource to the north and 2 green to the east, for example.
What's really important, as you mentioned this, is it very much depends on where you are positioned to the board.
Yes.
So you could essentially both end up with exactly the same card, map tile, but you could...
It would be mirrored if you're sitting facing each other.
Yeah. So you couldn't necessarily choose the same island.
Yeah, it's your orientation, the way you are facing.
Which confuses me a lot.
They did that one time, but I think you kind of got after that. When you excavate an island, you have to pay drachma, which is the currency in the game. And you can choose anywhere on the island that you are docked at, provided it meets the map tile criteria. You place the island down, and you usually from that get more actions per turn, or you get new gold cards. You draw 2 gold cards at the start of the game, pick one, and then every time you draw 2 and pick one. Gold cards basically give you victory points depending on where your temples have been built. So, for example, there's one that gives you 2 points for each quadrant of the map that you built a temple in. There's one that gives you 2 points for every temple you built with a specific resource on it, etc., etc. I think there's about 10 different ones.
Yeah, all with varying degrees, differences in victory points.
Yeah, and difficulties, obviously. Play continues until a player places their final island, and if they temple. Sorry, I keep saying islands for the temple. Once a player places their final temple, if they are the first player, the other person gets another turn. If they are the second player, the game ends immediately. And then you tally up your victory points. You get victory points for each map card that you have successfully excavated a temple with, and obviously you get more victory points the harder the temple is. Harder difficulties just have more resource requirements on them. You get victory points depending on how much money you have left over. I think you get 1 for every 10.
Yep.
And obviously your gold cards. And that, I think, is essentially it. There's a couple of free actions. Selling resources go up in value the more there are on the board. So as I said, they start on a marketplace, and the more they get put down, the greater the sale value of those when you do come to sell them.
Hmm.
To sell them, you have to move to the central island, your starting point, but you can sell for free. Selling doesn't take an action. There's also 3 levels to the number of maps you can buy. You can spend varying amounts of money to buy varying numbers of maps at the same time. You don't get a discount for getting more. Getting more in one turn because it's one action actually costs quite a bit more. Anything else you think I've missed?
No, that's probably about it. What I would say is running time is probably around half an hour, I reckon.
No, definitely an hour.
Do you reckon?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah, no, I would say it runs about an hour, 45 minutes at the press, but most of the games we played have taken over an hour.
Okay.
That's with breaks. So yeah, it's not as quick and simple as the box would suggest.
No.
We'll get onto that in a second. So shall we get on to the scoring then?
Sure. So first up, under our general criteria, we have components. So that includes what comes in the box, but also things like the amount of space it takes up, and also how quick it is to set up and take down.
Yeah,
Which I would say is mercifully and blessedly short with this one. It's really, really easy and really, really quick.
it's a very simple, quick setup. Teardown, I think, actually takes a little bit longer than setup because you usually have cubes
All over the
all over
board.
the shop and temples all over the shop. But yeah, to set up, I mean, it's 10 minutes if that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And given that it's a tile placement game, I actually don't think it's too bad in terms of table space.
No, it's not because it is fairly. It's self-limiting in
Yeah.
a way. I mean, unless you just continue to play. I mean, I think we get about 2/3 of the way through the tiles most of the games that we play.
Yeah.
So they've balanced the number of tiles quite effectively.
And if you compare it with something like Carcassonne or even Clank, which again, tile laying games, I feel like because of the nature of it, it tends to be quite contained, doesn't become very sprawling.
No,
We
it
do
doesn't.
tend to build out in rectangular
Yeah.
circuits almost.
But I think the game lends itself to that naturally because
Yeah.
of trying to balance your resources on different compass
Mhm.
points. So if you start building all off in one direction, you're going to run afoul quite quickly. So it naturally self-contains in a way.
Yeah. And so whilst it's not the kind of game that you can play in a pub, for example, it is a really good travel game. You could pack it and take it on holiday.
Yeah, if you've got a reasonable sized table, you'll be able to
Yeah,
play it.
because
Yeah,
the actual
definitely.
box itself is quite small and quite self-contained,
Yeah,
quite portable.
yeah, and I think that's one of the the points when it comes to components. I mean, we haven't got onto the components in general yet, but the box is very small
Hmm.
and it packs quite a lot into that.
Yep.
It's one of these games that you could easily see coming in a much larger box and there being a massive waste of space, but they haven't done that, thankfully.
Yep.
It's roughly the size of a hardback book, a little bit bigger.
Yep.
Um,
The components themselves, I mean, to be honest, they're a bit bog standard.
yeah, everything's perfectly serviceable. The tiles are nice and chunky.
Hmm.
You've got wooden temple meeples. You've got
Yeah.
your little boat meeples. It's great. You know, I've got nothing bad to say about it. I think again, to save space to make the box smaller, the player boards and the marketplace board are basically card. They just
Yeah,
they're
quite thin
card.
cardstock.
But I understand why they've done that.
Yeah.
It's there to keep the box as tiny as it is, which I think is absolutely fine.
Mhm.
It's not one of those games where getting things disrupted on your player board is going to cause a massive problem.
No, it's more the marketplace that's an issue, but the marketplace is
It's
set
very
off to one
easily
side, so
to check, and they're very easily to fix if it does get knocked
yeah.
because you just basically just count the number of cubes.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say into components?
No, not. But I think it looks very pretty.
Yeah, so the
In,
artwork is very sort of classical Greek artwork.
yeah, but I think as like a tableau with tile placing games, some of them can look a bit messy. But this is very aesthetically pleasing when it's out on the
Mhm.
table. I have to say, and I think I rate it for that.
Mm.
A tile laying game of this nature should look good, and it does.
Okay, so how did you score it?
I gave it an 8.
Oh, okay. So I gave it a 6.
Wow. Okay. All right. Do you want to talk to me a little bit more about?
Yeah,
What
I
you...
think so. For all the reasons that you rated it, around just the components, just being a little bit bog standard, really. There's nothing particularly stands out. And whilst you quite like the art, I don't know that it particularly inspires me.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what they would have done differently. I think that's a preference thing. But
Yeah. Fair
you
enough.
know,
Okay. Yeah. No, I think it looks really, really pretty.
okay. Okay, so on to complexity. And as always, this isn't about how complex a game is or isn't, but how much the complexity suits the gameplay. We also talk about things like analysis paralysis and also how much we argue about the rules.
Mm-hmm.
It is very easy and simple to teach.
It is, but it's not oversimple.
No, it's not. And I think this is where the beauty of this game comes in.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I think this is this game's strongest point
Yeah.
because there is a elegance to the rules that it is simple, but it is not dull. There's enough complexity there. And I often ask myself the question of would adding more to this make it a better game? And I don't think so. I think if you added anything to this or took anything away, any of the various facets of the rules, you'll end up with something lesser. But you would if you added something, I think.
Hmm.
And it's that very delicate balance that you don't see very often, where actually they've nailed it.
Yeah.
They've got it absolutely for what it is. They've got it absolutely right.
Yeah. So I think it is very simple to teach. In essence, it is lay a tile, build an island according to subject number of conditions, and then excavate a temple. Where your added complexity comes in is through your victory cards, which you call them
Mm,
goal cards. So making sure that you're satisfying those longer game
yeah,
requirements, and that I think also those goal cards can be quite different. So actually, it's very difficult to preempt what it is that your partner's doing or
they
your
can.
opponent
Yeah,
is doing, should
yeah,
I say? And therefore, it becomes quite difficult. How do you block them?
yeah.
You know. Then what I also really love about it is that once you've got your head around the basic concepts, there is a huge amount of strategic depth that
Oh
comes
yeah,
with it.
yeah.
That you don't, or certainly I didn't appreciate to begin with, but it's only through
Mm.
repeated playthroughs that I'm beginning to realise just how much strategic and tactical depth there is in what looks to and appears to be a really relatively quite straightforward, simple game.
Yeah, no, there's a huge amount of depth here. And I think there's also a very significant facet of this, which is around resource management, which is not particularly obvious when you first start playing it. But as you on repeated plays, you start to see this real push and pull between spending money, selling, getting resources, and if you mismanage your resources, you can get left behind quite quickly.
And there's something really tactical about them where you place those
Mm,
resources and where you place your tile, because actually I want that and I need to make sure that I can get to it, or also I do not want him to get it, so I'm going to make this really difficult for him to get.
to get to through shipping lanes.
Also,
Yeah,
through placing carefully or consideredly, is that a word? Where
considerately.
considerately, where you place your resources
Mm.
means you can drive up the value of the ones that
Yeah,
are in your own boat. So actually, now when I go into town to sell, I'm selling them for 4 drachma rather than 2.
yeah.
So there's something really quite thinky about it
Mm.
in a way that I hadn't really fully appreciated. And to build your later temples or your higher scoring ones, they are more expensive. You need like I think it's 9 drachma,
Yeah, the hard ones cost 9 drachma.
and actually that's quite a lot of money for in-game currency.
It is, yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah.
you have to
That's
save
quite
up for that.
expensive. Yeah, yeah. You've got to plan it really, really effectively. So yeah, I mean, I think in general, this is one of those games which I feel absolutely nails in terms of how we treat this category. I couldn't ask for much better.
Hmm.
So I've given it a 9.
Okay. One of the things that I will say that I've downgraded it from is, and this is really quite picky, downgraded it for, should I say, and it is really quite picky, is some of the iconography, particularly around your victory cards. It's not necessarily particularly intuitive. Every single time I get a victory card, I have to look it up and I have to look at the rules. And actually, some of them, I'm still not entirely sure how to satisfy,
Mhm.
um, because they are a bit convoluted and a bit confusing.
Okay,
And I maybe don't take them because I don't really understand how to do it.
okay,
And I don't want to tell you that I'm not taking it and ask for your advice. So I think I downgraded it for that, but I gave it an 8.
okay, fine. All right.
So next up, shelf life, and this includes things like value for money, but also replayability.
Mm.
So how much does it retail for?
I think, and I say I think because it's actually out of print at the moment, but I think it used to retail somewhere in the mid-20s.
Okay. I would say that is exceptional value for money in
Yeah,
terms of what you get in the box and the
yeah,
amount of games and the amount of fun that we've had out of it. I think mid-20s, bang on,
yeah.
really good
I
price
think it's a
point
decent price point for it. I think I've seen less. I've
for
seen
more.
less for more easily. It's a deceptively small box, and you may think, oh, 25. That seems quite a lot for that small box, but it's absolutely worth it in that
Yeah.
sense. So let's talk about shelf life.
Mm,
Because this one I'm a little bit less sure about. I really enjoy my time with it, but there's part of me that wonders if it'll get a little bit old over roughly 10 plays. I think that's sort of the shelf life I feel it has for
yeah.
me.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think something like Carcassonne for you has infinitely more replayability.
Yeah,
And I wonder why, because I think this is a better game by far. I
Mm.
think it is far more balanced, and we'll come on to this, and a tighter game in general. And yet, I agree with you. I reckon probably 10, maybe 15 plays, and I'm probably going to be done with it.
I think it might be to do with how tight of a game it is.
Hmm.
I think there perhaps isn't as large a decision space to keep me coming back to it over and over again. Because I've been trying to puzzle because I really like the game, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm probably not going to play this forever. And when I'm trying to puzzle out in my own head why do I have that feeling? I think it's because there's almost only so much you can do. It's a very, very,
Hmm.
very tight, very focused play experience. And I think that X factor to take games over that sort of play this 10 times, then maybe, once a year kind of category for me, which is where I think this will go.
Hmm.
I think it's worth saying that I probably won't get rid of this because it's such a small box.
Yep.
And I think there'll always be the occasion where I want to pull it out and
Hmm.
play it. But it just doesn't have that width, that breadth of
Hmm.
tactical decision making that I think brings me back to games over and over again. And I think because it's so tight, some of that excitement goes away.
Hmm.
That's the easiest I can articulate why I feel that way about this. And I don't think it's a negative about it at all because I think it's a really good value for money proposition. I just don't think it's going to be a a June or an Ark Nova or something that I could just play forever, infinitely. I do think it has a definite
Hmm.
shelf life with me.
But also, it's a different kind of game.
Yeah,
It's not the same. It doesn't fill up the same slot on our board game shelf or when we put it out for the evening. I think there's something there as well around competitivity.
competitiveness.
Yeah,
That's
that
a
word.
hard.
Words are hard tonight. It's hard. So there is something about that, and I think we'll talk about a bit more about that
Yeah, sure.
later on.
Okay,
Okay, so how did you score it?
I gave it a 6.
Yeah, I gave it a 6 because whilst I really enjoy it and it's a really tight game and I think it's exceptionally well balanced, it's just not going to be that game that I'm reaching for over and over and over again.
No, I think I think its shelf life. I wouldn't say it's limited, but I think it is finite
Yeah.
in a way that things I've given 8s and 9s to in this category, I can see
Hmm.
myself playing in 10 years. This maybe now and again, but it's not going to be like I want to pull this out
Yeah.
once a month at least, kind of thing. It's just
And I don't think
where
it,
some of those all timers for me sit.
yeah. And even when we've had games that are much more, that they have got limited shelf space because maybe you're playing a series of scenarios, etc.
Mm,
I haven't perhaps maybe felt that same urge to constantly grab it off the shelf
yeah,
in the same way,
yeah.
you know?
There's almost lack of moorishness there.
Yes, it's lacking that, I think, a
Yeah,
little bit.
yeah, and I think
I
it's
think it's a
just
criticism,
no, I
particularly.
don't think so. It's you get that classic no two games are alike.
Yeah,
In this, I feel like games will start to feel even now after 6 plays, games have started to feel
quite similar.
not samey and not dull, but quite similar in
Yeah,
their flow and the way they go. And yeah, I think it's when you break out of that that I start coming back for more and more and more. I don't really see that with this,
yeah,
but above average.
absolutely.
Okay,
Okay, so our final category under our general rating scale is fun. Did you have any fun playing it?
I did indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is a really good game. It's a really good game. It is fun to play and I enjoy playing it. I like the theme. I'm confused still as to why volcanoes are a resource. I'd like to,
It's a
I'd like
resource.
to ask the designer what that was about. Yeah, so what we need is wood and lava. We need lava. Sure,
For the sacrifices. I don't
sure.
think they were sacrificing
No,
people,
no.
were they? The Greeks, no.
You're standing ignorant.
I can study classics, all right. I study useful degrees like psychology.
Sure. But no, it is a
No
good.
shade to any psychologists out there.
Thanks, Owen, for you. No, it is a really fun experience. I think the mechanic about the orientation and the spatial puzzle
Really cool.
is so cool. Like I haven't seen that before. That is a first. I'm sure it exists elsewhere out there, but I haven't personally seen it before. And it's a really unique twist on the tile
Hmm.
laying, on the tile laying mechanism. Like I really like it. It can screw you over sometimes
Hmm.
because you can end up with a cluster of maps, as I did on our last game, which were like, because you often get maps like, oh, I can't play these now, but I can see a route, I can see how I can make the map do what I need, so I can place it. I had a whole bunch the last time we played that was just like, yeah, this is never going to work ever, unless I start building off the bottom of the table. That is a rarity. And the game does have mechanisms to mitigate that, the whole consulting the Oracle thing and being
Hmm.
able to get more maps. But I spent 2 turns drawing 2 actions and a lot of money drawing maps, and I ended up blank. So it can that mechanism can screw you over sometimes. There is, and I'll probably talk about this more under table talk, but there is interactivity there.
Hmm.
And I feel like the interactivity increases the more you play it, but I'm going to save that for
Hmm.
the next category. And yeah, it's just a nice time.
It is, and it's quite gentle, I think, whilst
Yeah,
providing with a huge amount of strategic depth.
yeah.
And we'll talk about competitiveness as well, but it is quite gentle.
I would say it's brain burning without being intense.
Yes, and we didn't talk about this under AP, and
Mm.
obviously we
No,
know
look back
that
to it now.
I kind of struggle with that,
Mm.
and I've got better. I have got a lot
You have
better,
got a lot better with
but
AP.
this doesn't challenge me in the same way, and maybe it's just because I'm better at tile laying games, but I don't find it as stressful and as thinky
Mm.
because I think of the element of random and the fact that your goal cards or victory cards or whatever you want to call them, you pick them up as you go along, so you're just making the best decision that you have.
Mm.
And I think because of that, it mitigates some of that AP.
I can see some people really struggling with the spatial element of it. I think it's worth flagging up that you
And
are,
I struggle with that to begin with.
well, to begin with, but it's worth flagging up that you are very good at this. Or I'm very, very bad
I'm
at
just
it.
better at ball. I'm just better at most things than you.
Yeah, I know. But I think it's worth mentioning that it slots with your brain. I've
Mhm.
noticed you make some really quite clever tactical decisions on this, and they seem to come quite naturally and quite fast to you. I think there might be other people that would struggle. I don't struggle with the spatial thing, but I think there would be people that really struggle with that spatial element.
I think what makes it quite challenging is the idea that you some islands will be only accessible through portage,
Yeah,
and that's
that's
when
when that
things
starts to get
begin to
really
get
brain burning for
yeah,
me.
because you start having to calculate just how far you can move in one turn
Yeah,
with the resources you have. It's also worth saying that when you're docked in a port in an island, you can't have two boats docked in a port. You can travel through it. That also has an impact as well
yeah.
because that
That comes into the
changes.
interactivity that
Yeah,
I started using a little bit more, but I'll go on to that
yeah.
in the next thing. But yeah, I mean, in general, this is a damn good time. Like, I enjoy playing this. I enjoy the puzzle it presents. I enjoy what it does to my brain. And you do feel that depth, and you feel like you are making tactical choices. It's not just la la. I'm just chucking things at the board and seeing what happens. You have to be quite on it as such. And I do enjoy the resource management aspect of it,
Yeah.
and I enjoy that more the more we played.
Oh, do you?
Mm, I like
Okay.
it. I think it's very, very finely tuned and finely balanced.
Yeah. I think I enjoy placing my resources a lot more to be difficult. And I enjoyed
Just,
that.
you like
Sometimes I've
screwing
got
with
my
it,
head out,
yeah,
I'm screwing with you, and I've
yeah.
enjoyed that more as the game's gone on and
Whereas I
playing
quite
with
like
it.
the maxing of reason like how much can I get in the turn by placing this here and then
Yeah.
going to go. I like that little puzzle.
Yeah.
It's almost that little series of interconnected puzzles which I
Hmm.
really enjoy. So yeah, I rate this. I've given it a 7.
Yep. So I gave it a 6.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Um, I think. Why didn't I? I do. I enjoy it, and I have a really, really good time.
Hmm.
And I think it's a great game. I just don't know that it's there for me.
Okay, so above average for you.
Yeah,
Very
above
good.
average.
Very
Yeah.
good for me. Okay, all right. So as ever, let's total this up and get an average. So that gives us a general score of exactly 7, which I think fits quite
Yeah.
well with the conversation that we've had. I'm
Yeah.
really happy with this getting a 7, generally. Okay, so on to our two-player ratings, and as this is a two-player only game, obviously we won't be looking at scalability.
You've stolen my bit.
Have I? Okay. I mean, you can repeat it if you like.
That's all right. You go. You said it.
All right, do you want to kick us off with the scoring?
So first up, we have table talk. So things like getting to know you.
And increasingly, I think in this category, I tend to look at interactivity on the board.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Um, so you've already kind of touched on this. I don't think it is massively interactive.
Mm,
I think it's very much about how you choose to play it and how you choose to use that space.
yeah.
Um, and I think my approach tends to vary on the game depending how I feel about the game,
Mm.
about how I scored it. So I'm aware that this is Wild's probably scoring of the night, but I don't know there is a huge amount of space for interactivity.
I think there is some.
Yep.
I think more so than some. I mean, compare with Carcassonne and things like that. I think there's more so than that.
Hmm.
I think there is the capacity there to not necessarily screw over your opponent. I don't think it's not that kind of game, but there is capacity to make things more difficult for them.
Hmm.
And you can do that in a few different ways. You could do that by keeping an eye on the resources and
Hmm.
putting things out of reach, perhaps, or choosing to put down things that you know are not going to help them. There's also the ability, if the board allows it, to block.
But is this not under competitiveness rather than
No, I
being
think
optional?
it comes under interactivity
Okay.
in the sense because you are directly interacting with your opponent. And I think that there's always a slightly scale here between, solos that you play together, which you tend to find quite a lot of these days, or that do have table talk, or something perhaps that doesn't cause much discussion between you, but you actually are interacting you're engaging with each other in another way, which I think this category for me is more so becoming about. And I think there's a decent amount in this. I don't think it's going to set the world on fire in that regard, but I think it is there. I think it's worth flagging up.
Again, I imagine it would be a very different experience if you had somebody with a lot of AP who
Mm.
really struggled with it. I think then it could become very, very dry and quite difficult.
Yeah, it could be quite a dull affair for
Yeah.
the other person. Because as long as somebody's actually doing things, it's also because of the visual tactility of it all.
Hmm.
It's one of those things where you are very invested in your opponent's turn, and everything's sort of moving around the map, and you do stay engaged in the game and what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think actually that's an interesting point that I hadn't really previously considered. There are a lot of games where I don't necessarily pay attention to what it is that you're doing on your board,
Yeah,
or potentially how you're playing your turns. Whereas actually, if I do miss something, I'm like, I want to know what was it that you
yeah.
did?
What
Where
what
did
do
you
you
lay
do?
that?
Yeah,
Where did
yeah,
you
that's
place that?
important.
And
Yeah,
how are you getting there? And can we count these through? So
you have to stay
actually,
very engaged in what your opponent is doing.
yeah.
Um,
And because of the way I think the turns are structured and the actions you can take, you might spend a lot of time considering where you're going to place your tile because you draw the tile at the end of your turn, so
yeah,
you have the entire opponent's turn to work out where you're going to place it and consult with your maps and stuff. It means that your thinking can be done, I think, sort of casually while the other person's taking their turn.
yeah, yeah. It can. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I think it's decent. I think it's average.
Hmm.
So I'm giving it a 5.
Okay, so I gave it a 4,
Okay,
just
slightly
because,
below average
yeah,
then.
slightly below
Yeah.
average.
All right, fine.
All right, so let's come on to competitiveness then.
Hmm.
So I was surprised at how competitive I found
Mm,
this, and again, it took me a little bit by surprise. And again, maybe that's because of the strategic depth that came as the game went
potentially.
on.
And I think visuals, when you see this kind of game, you're expecting something. I don't think this is what you were expecting necessarily. I think you found a much meatier thing beneath it than you
Yes,
were perhaps
so
expecting.
I'm perhaps pleasantly surprised by it. I think what always really surprises me is just how close our games are.
Yeah, they're usually within a couple of points
Yeah,
most of the time.
and that really surprises me,
Mm,
even though I feel like I am storming into victory,
yeah.
and actually I'm not.
Mm,
And I think it's that element of, again, I've complained about this in other games, so I'm going to look at Terra Mystica
hmm.
and say that because I don't really know how you're scoring, it becomes about, optimizing my play.
Sure.
I don't find it and I don't feel it with
Yeah,
this.
you actually
I do
do
feel
see
like I
how
am
I'm scoring.
more,
You're on top of how
yeah.
I'm scoring. Yeah.
And there is always that race for placing temples, and we're usually within one turn of placing temples
Yeah,
of
it's
each
very
other.
rare that somebody stretches 2 into the lead. It's usually
Yeah.
quite a back and forth. I
Um,
think the last game we played was actually the first one where you stretched 2 in the lead.
yeah.
However, it still ended up being within a point.
Hmm.
And I think there's difference. I think the difference that I've noticed in quite a lot of our games is I
Hmm.
think I'm a little bit better at the goal scoring cards,
Yeah.
but you're much better at the actual core gameplay.
Hmm.
So we end up being very close because you concentrate on getting your temples out in really good places,
Yeah.
and I'm more trying to concentrate about what my goal cards are. And we end up somewhere very, very close at
Yeah.
the end.
I also think you tend to go for higher scoring maps than me.
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
rather guarantee getting them out for cheaper
yeah.
than take a risk and
I've
take a punt
I've
on
flip
gold
flopped back
cards.
and forth on that.
Yeah.
I still can't quite figure out what my optimal strategy with that
Hmm.
is. I have flip flopped on that one.
Yeah.
There's some way I've tried to rush it down. There's some way I've gone for really high value ones.
Mm.
But I think both are. I think the game's well constructed enough that both are viable.
Yeah, and that's what's really
I haven't
amazing,
found
isn't
a
it?
completely unviable
Yeah.
route to victory with this.
Yeah.
Everything seems viable. You just need to do it right.
And that's what I mean about it being so well balanced, I think.
Yeah, no,
So
it's really
even when you
impressive.
didn't get all your temples out, we were still within a point of each other or a
Yeah,
couple of points.
and it absolutely is the kind of game that if they hadn't got that right, you would solve it.
Yep.
Whereas I don't think maybe after 20 plays you will solve this in inverted commas, but They've done. You can't. There's not one obvious route through this, which is great and should be lauded.
And I think that there is, again, a lot of tactical depth. So you are fighting not only over resources, but you're also fighting over islands because very quickly
Yeah,
you can build maps.
we didn't mention this actually.
Mhm.
Sorry to interrupt, but it's worth mentioning here that you cannot excavate a temple on an island that already has one excavated.
Yeah.
So if you excavate a temple and then start making a massive island out of it, you actually take up a huge amount of. You did this last time.
Hmm.
You take up a huge amount of real estate. You actually really screw your opponent over in terms of them being able to find places to put things.
However, what's also really interesting is a bit like Carcassonne.
Mm.
If you start building and you place a temple on another island and it subsequently becomes joined up, that's legit.
That's fine, but unlike Carcassonne, you don't steal.
Yeah, you can't steal.
Means it's fine. But
Um,
yeah.
and I think that also creates a huge amount of depth because,
Mm.
again, you can then create islands that nobody can access,
Yeah.
which we've done before, or
Yeah.
I've done before, specifically because I know that I'm locking you out of options.
Hmm.
And it's all these little things that add to that depth
Mm.
that makes it really competitive
It does, yeah.
without it being really particularly nail biting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So I think that,
competitive. That's what I said earlier. It's not intense. It's not an
yeah,
intense experience, but it is very, very competitive.
I think that's why this could be a really, really ideal game for a lot of couples, where particularly
Mm.
one person finds that competitive intensity too much,
Yeah.
but they still want that competitive experience. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It'll really fit that sweet
it's
spot.
gentle and it's nice, but you've still got that real element of
Yeah, it's not something like a
dueling.
basilica, which is really like screw you cutthroat kind of thing. There's very little cutthroats to it,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean it's less competitive.
yeah.
And you really do feel like you are matching wits with your opponent when you're playing it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it did really. I think it does really, really well in this.
Hmm.
I gave it a 7.
I also gave it a 7.
Cool, brilliant. Obviously because it's 2-player only, we don't talk about scalability. I I do wonder why it is a 2-player only experience because I think it would have been really easy to make this 2 to 4. I assume it's something to do with balance
Hmm.
and spatial puzzle and having 4 people around the table because then you'd have to sit 4 corners of the compass
Yeah,
and maybe they just thought that was a bit too
an
much. But
accessibility issue.
I have asked the question like, why is this only for 2 players?
You'd need more victory cards as well, and some victory
Mm,
cards are easier to do than others. And I think if you got landed with a bunch of the hard ones, that would become really problematic
yeah,
and it would really lock you out of a lot of victory points.
yeah. But
Uh,
it's an interesting concept that I
mm,
think taken forward into and meddled with to become a 3 or 4 player experience. I don't know if anybody's sort of done that, but this kind of concept with more people might be a really good, cool thing.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those. It's the first 2-player only game I played where I'm kind of like, why is this 2-player only?
I don't think it's missing anything though for more players.
No, it's not. It's not missing anything. It's just this is not about scoring. This
Yeah.
is just a point of curiosity more than anything. I'd love to I'd love to have a chat with the designer just to understand why they
Mhm.
made that, why they sort of put that barrier like it has to be 2 players down there, and why they didn't go for more. It's just quite unusual to see in the gaming space.
Mhm.
But yeah, answers on a postcard.
Okay, so let's tally those up and see
Yeah,
how we
sure.
did.
So that gives us an overall 2-player rating of a 6, which I think that's just a symptom of our scoring criteria, really. And
Yeah.
this is much better than a 6 as a 2-player experience for my money.
Yeah.
This is a solid 7 for me.
Yeah, I think it's the table talk thing, isn't
Yeah,
it? So again, it's about whether that's what you want in this kind of game or not.
yeah,
But I think there is something there about this being a highly competitive game without that cutthroat thing that really makes us stand out.
yeah. And I think we'll really hit the sweet spot for certain people.
Yeah.
So if you like what you hear, yeah, unreservedly recommend this.
Hmm.
And a bit of a hidden gem, I think,
Yeah,
because I
it
don't
is,
see
isn't
people
it?
talk about this very often.
No, and I think
I knew nothing about it. I bought it completely on a whim.
yeah, we picked it up at a board game convention, didn't we? I
Yeah,
think,
yeah.
and it really has surprised me. Again, you go in with a low bar, and it surprises
Yeah, well,
that.
you're often positively surprised,
Yes,
as you
yes.
are in this case. But yeah, highly recommend. I'm very glad we picked it up and we played it. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. As always, thank you for joining us. And until next time, be good to each other, have fun, play lots of board games.